All right. We are live today. This is Ashley Arnold from Fleet Feet, and I am joined with Nate Helming from the Run Experience and Magdalena Boulet from GOO. If you are just getting started with us, this is our third installment of our live show of Together We Move, which is a daily training plan that we are working with the Run Experience to put together. We are offering daily training, everything from running to yoga to mindfulness, a really inclusive package to get you moving right now. So I'm going to introduce Nate from the Run Experience, who is working with us on this program.
Hey guys, it's fun to be on hanging out with you guys' YouTube channel.
Yeah, cool we're used to being on yours.
I know, right? Anyway, guys, if you don't know us already in the Run Experience, we post videos each and every week on training to make you a better runner, from strength training, injury prevention, running technique, to featuring very cool runners doing very cool things. So we'd love to see you over there. And a little bit more about the Together We Move program. We're really excited to deliver these daily workouts, and we've put a little structure to them. So Monday through Sunday, you could actually follow each progressive day, and it would really be nice and balanced. Ashley, do you want to do a little breakdown on what those days are?
Yeah, so we have a recovery, sort of like a yoga day. We have 2 different running workouts. So Tuesday we have a more drill-focused running workout. Wednesday we have a strength and mobility workout, which if you tuned in this week, Magda submitted that workout for us so we can...
She brought it.
She brought an awesome workout for leg strength to make you faster. And we will add that description. You can check it out in the app or on our YouTube channel. And then Thursdays we have a core and another core focus or HIIT type of workout. Friday, we are back to another run. Saturday is a mindful run. And Sunday is really kind of like an anything goes, a super fun way to...
mystery runs where you do crazy things with Ashley. Tomorrow, guys, you should definitely get in. I recorded a conversation with Dean Karnassus, and we had a nice interview together. And it is in the app, so you can go on a run, you can stretch out, mobilize afterwards, and you can just listen to all the crazy things. Dean is such a storyteller. He is such an interesting human. So such a fun conversation with him.
So that's awesome. You can follow along in the app with that tomorrow. And today, this evening, we have Magda on the show. If you did her workout on Wednesday, then you got to know her just a little bit. But if you don't know who Magda is, man, Magda, you have done it all. She went from swimming when you were younger. You started cross country, and then you went to join. You were a member of the 2008 Olympic marathon team, and then following that you ran a 5K PR after running a marathon PR, I think, right? A 15:14 in the 5K. And then you went to run ultras. You've won the Western States, you've won Leadville, and most recently you ran the 173-mile Tahoe Rim Trail. Oh my gosh.
That is so cool. Can I just say, I was really proud that my wife and I hiked the Tour de Mont Blanc in 8 days, and that was 115 miles, and you just did what feels like double that in a day and a half. It's crazy.
It was quite the adventure.
So thanks Magda for coming on, and thanks to GOO Energy Labs, who what are we doing with them today, Nate? Do you have...
Yeah, so GOO is bringing on a nice little giveaway for you guys, sampling some little energy gel packs with some Roctane in there. There's 2 different packs you can win, but all you need to do is click the link in the description of this video to enter. And the only rub is you got to be present. You got to stick all the way to the end of the show for that live drawing. We'll get to choose who's going to be the lucky winner of some delicious, tasty GOO nutrition.
Awesome. Okay, so Magda, we'll dive in just quickly with some question, a little bit more background about you. I know I went into a whole spiel about some of these big running highlights, but also yesterday you just launched a new film with Gu and Hoka. So if you wanted to tell us a little bit about that to get started.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on the show. It's a total honor, and it's fun to show and share my workout earlier this week, but also a pleasure just to talk about what I do. And again, I've been with Gu for 20 years now.
Wow.
So it's been a long time. It's been both a passion and a profession for me, and just being able to combine, what do you do outside of work with what do you do for your profession is a dream come true. And the film that we launched yesterday, the Sky Project, was an idea that was born on the run. Just like, a lot of good ideas. It was in the middle of the run, and it was just something that I've been dreaming about sharing with my son, been wanting to take him on that loop. And Andy, who produced the movie, a good friend of mine, somehow pivoted the conversation by the end of the run to, instead of just hiking it, to go and try to attempt the FKT. So Tahoe is a very special place for me. It's almost my backyard, not quite literally my backyard, but within driving distance is a place where I spent many years just training for the marathon. It's a place that I consider where I get stronger. It's just the most beautiful terrain that we have in California, if not somewhere around the world. So very fortunate to have that place in our backyard, and being able to prepare for something like this. Was definitely a new undertaking for me, and sharing that journey to working towards that attempt was a dream come true. I had so many great people behind me that were a part of it. It just made it so special. It's definitely a team effort. Unlike any other races that I do, it's usually just thinking about a decade ago training for a 5K or 10K. Once you show up, it's just you, the watch, and the course. Ultra running is so different, right? You can't do it alone. And this project really showed the need for the community, that and the ability to bring us together towards something that is such a much bigger goal than just a time or FKT, and that was just so much fun. And I learned a ton about myself, in the Q&A yesterday after the movie, which if you are interested in watching, it's still on it's been recorded, and you can still go to the Hoka's Instagram, IGTV, or YouTube, and you can still view it.
And we'll add a description. Yes, we'll add the link in the description after this.
Yeah.
But the biggest takeaway for me is that I definitely had to become stronger myself in order to be able to set a goal like this. Something more was required of me to show up and be able to do something like this, and that's what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to grow and challenge myself and do it with some awesome people behind me.
Yeah.
We wanted to pull on that thread a little bit, just looking at your career and all the different things you've accomplished. There have been these moments where you've kind of changed and shifted gears a little bit, but what keeps you motivated and engaged? And I mean, I think that's a good question in general, but especially in this particular moment when a lot of people have used races to keep themselves ready, and a lot of those have taken off the schedule. We thought you could provide some good insight there.
Definitely a difficult time, and I think I would have two different answers if we were not talking about where we are currently in the situation. Usually, when I ask myself, like what gets me out the door, what motivates me to stay in a sport for as long as I have, and usually my answer is curiosity. Like, I'm curious to find out how much more I can grow, what can I learn along the way, is there still room for improvement in different skills, and that that curiosity to learn. I'm definitely a learner, is what really, excites me, especially if I can find a gap in something that, I know I'm not very good at, and work towards, small goals, and work towards something that I can perfect over time. Just gives me a lot of satisfaction. It's a little bit different now. Now, I think there's no doubt that this is a very difficult time for everyone. And as much as I would say, I, set a big goal that I want to work towards, I definitely have pivoted towards, more short-term goals, goals that I know that I can achieve, and, and the time is, and everything changes so quickly, from day to day. So setting, more realistic goals, more short-term goals, even for the week, versus looking, several months from now, and having a race that be canceled can be disappointing. So kind of pivoting to focusing on now, and what brings me, the most joy and pleasure, and really reflecting on why do I love running? Why do I get out the door is what is helping me kind of get through from day to day. And I found that, just like everybody else, that running is so much more than just training for a race for so many of us, right? I know that for me, it's tremendous help in just, getting out the door, and it's the time where I get to process difficult, situations, or just process information. It's, a time where, I'm allowed to calm myself down and take care of my mind and my mental health. And it really is not so much right now that I'm setting big audacious goals for big races down the road. It's more about just coping, and staying mentally healthy and sane. And that is like the biggest gift that you can have, and running is providing that for me right now, and I know for so many others.
Yeah, that's that idea of like being in the now is so much of like what we've talked about with this program too, of just like, not necessarily training for something, but training because it brings us together in this way, and because we can set those smaller goals. Are there any of those, like, what is an example for you of a weekly goal with running right now? I know, like, in some places here where I live, for example, the trails are closed right now, so we're getting more and more. Like, I run from my house, so setting a goal is very different.
Yeah, you've been doing intervals back and forth in front of on your road.
I have, and that has created this, like, it sounds like this ridiculous thing. It's super boring, but like the new goal is, okay, mentally, how many times can I do this? Can I do a long run on this? Like, or challenging myself to see, like, observe certain things along the route. So finding that sense of adventure. Like, what has that been like for you, Magda?
No, very similar. I think that from week to week, I try to set little goals for myself. And for example, I look at in my own neighborhood, can I gain the most amount of bird and find the most steepest streets in my neighborhood, and the most amount of stairs to run on. And it's giving me realistic goals that I can achieve, which brings a lot of just like hanging on to a little bit of control that you might have. Gives you a little bit of of satisfaction that you still have control of something, but also that curiosity to get to know my own neighborhood that I haven't really explored in ways before that that I'm exploring right now. A good example, someone at GU proposed doing 30 burpees per day for 30 days. And I kind of jumped on the challenge because it was so different. And again, like you said, it's like it creates community. And
I get so excited with burpees, so I absolutely love it. We actually did a burpee challenge on our channel a year ago, and you could start.
Hard.
They're hard. They're totally hard, but so fun.
Yes, but again, you learn something like, wow, I'm not that good at burpees, but over time they get easier. And again, it's another little, win. We're all looking for the small wins right now, right? Wherever we can get them. And I have a lot of different ideas every week. I could challenge myself in different ways, but it's kind of just balancing, the beauty and the simplicity of running that can, just provide now this like calming moment in our lives, with also finding a way to make it fun and and again, if you can do whatever challenge it is with your community, you have something to share, and it brings you closer together. So yeah, your program is doing exactly that.
Well, we're so glad you contributed. There was a line from the end of the movie, which is really great, and I just wanted to bring it up and just we're talking about it a little bit, but I just wanted to see how it maybe resonated with you then and how it resonates now. The idea was that, maybe choosing the FKT running 170 miles is inherently random and arbitrary. It's like, okay, it's like we just sort of do it. But there was this line that says, we do meaningless things to find meaning in ourselves and in each other. Right. And so, what does that mean to you in terms of training is not life or death at one respect, but it is doing something for us?
Oh gosh, it's doing so much for us, and I think that again, at the end, it's really not about that end result. It's not about that destination. It's about like how we get there and who we get there with, right? It's not even like setting goals, but it's going after those goals that we grow as a result of it. We become different people, and in a good way, because I definitely feel like that statement resonates so much with just being an endurance athlete, and it could be any race that you sign up for, and the meaning behind it is that you grow. You become stronger, more resilient. You gain confidence in areas that you haven't imagined, and those experiences is what really matters, and they're priceless. And again, like along the way, you're doing it with people that bring so much meaning to your life as well. And together, again, together is. Is the way that you come out on the other side a completely changed person. Yeah. And ready to tackle something else, and something even more challenging or very different, and that is what what life is all about.
Okay, I'm going to take a big turn now to just dive into nutrition here, because I know that's one thing that we definitely want to talk with you about, and thinking of all the ways that you have maneuvered through your running career and all the directions that you've gone and things that you've been able to do, and nutrition has been a big part of that, and especially as you do these longer things, nutrition is these longer events, like nutrition during those is really important. So I would love for you to touch briefly or not briefly on how you got into where you are with GU, your VP of Research and Innovation, and like how you got there, your career path with nutrition.
Yeah, right. That's a cool job title, by the way. I like that.
Well, I feel very fortunate, and it's probably the most authentic story that I can tell about my career. And it all started with me being in college and striving for excellence in the event that I was competing in, and it was the 5K. I was a graduate.
Where did you go to school?
Great question. I went to UC Berkeley. Go Bears! So right, just couple miles away from the GU Energy Labs headquarters. So I was in my senior year at Cal competing in it 5K, and it was exactly the moment. I remember I was at NCAA's, and it was about 6 hours before the 5K final, and I was sitting on a bench watching different events, my teammates performing, and that feeling where you just have butterflies in your stomach and your stomach keeps shrinking and shrinking. And I made a comment to one of my teammates. I said, wow, I'm racing in 6 hours and I can't even imagine eating anything right now because I have butterflies in my stomach and I'm so nervous about my race. And my teammate looked at me, and he was a decathlete who was already working with Go. And he looked at me and he handed me a packet of vanilla bean goo. And he goes, you gotta eat something. Your race is 6 hours away. Try this.
Oh my gosh.
So what year is this?
This is 1990. I'm gonna.
No, the reason why I asked
myself. At 1997.
Because how long was Goo around in 97?
So only a few years. Goo was born in 1993.
That's so cool.
So yes, that vanilla bean goo, gets handed in my hand, and I looked at it, and I waited, and before the race, I about 45 minutes before the race, I had my goo, and I remember coming back and didn't really think much of it. I had a great race. I finished third that year at NCAA's, and I can honestly say that race is what led my curiosity to trying to find out how much more is in the tank for me as an athlete, and can I get better. So
I'm going to give you a little hard time here, but are you doing what we always tell runners not to do, which is to try something brand new right before a race?
I did that twice in my life, and
your teammates or coaches think you're crazy. Did you not tell anyone?
I didn't tell anyone at that time. I took a big risk, and luckily it worked out for me. But I also got a nice lecture from a teammate who has been working already, with the founder at Go, Dr. Vaughn. And I got a nice little spiel about, why this is, the best thing I can take before a race, especially when I cannot eat anything, and why I should eat something versus nothing before a race of that intensity. But I remember coming home from that race and, went back to training. I graduated from college, and believe it or not, I kind of hit a plateau in my progression as an athlete. And I went back and started evaluating my situation, my training, my lifestyle, and in my nutrition. And this light bulb, went off, and I said, I feel like I'm doing everything I can to be the best athlete I can, but I'm not really spending a lot of time on my nutrition. So I asked my coach, I said, can we please go and talk to the founder at Go, because I want to talk to someone about nutrition, someone who knows a lot about nutrition. So we literally knocked on a door. Go was a small family-owned company, which they still are, in Berkeley, just a couple of miles away from the track where I spent a lot of miles on, and went to school. And that was the beginning of my journey with Go. We worked on my nutritional planning to get me to my first Olympic trials in 2004. I switched fairly quickly to marathons after graduating from college.
What drove you into the marathon?
Lifestyle. I was working two jobs, trying to, or two or three different jobs, trying to make it as a pro runner, and fairly quickly I found out that doing speed work at 6 a.m. is really harsh on your body. 5K speed work. And that I truly enjoyed the long, grind of the long run. I looked forward to the weekends where I could do my, 18-mile run. And the longer workouts, the longer intervals were giving me a lot of satisfaction and joy. So as naturally, that kind of drove the decision to sign up for my first marathon. And fairly, soon after my first marathon, I knew that I was in the right event. But nutrition, fine-tuning my nutrition plan didn't happen overnight. It was something that I invested time and dedicated myself to figuring out what works best for me. And at that time, I was hired by Good to do research on a part-time basis. That position grew into a full-time position. I ended up going back to grad school, got my degree in exercise physiology with sports nutrition as my emphasis. And yes, and it's been 20 years.
So just like this runner will try something brand new right before her biggest race. So she is the perfect person
Put her
to
in research
experiment and innovate. Put her in her lab coat and get her cooking.
Have her test things. Wait, so
Yes.
Magda, what you like your nutrition plan took time to perfect. So like, what were some of your early mistakes? Like, did you?
Very great question. I've had some mistakes, and actually, my first marathon, I'm such a student of whether it's the sport or of the event that my first marathon was actually Cleveland, Ohio. That was my first marathon, and I traveled all the way to Cleveland, Ohio, and I was going to do textbook nutrition. How often you take your drink and your gels, and I had this plan where it was just textbook without really fine-tuning it in my
what
practice.
was the for those of us who are less informed on the textbook nature of nutrition, like what were the recommendations at the time that you were trying to follow?
So I was trying to follow the most amount of carbs that you can get per hour, which really, it's between 60 and 90 grams of carbs, per hour of exercise. But that is such a general statement, right? And personalized nutrition really matters in how successful you're going to be in executing that plan. So taking too much at once, taking not enough, depending on there's so many factors that really dictate how much you should be taking, what you should be taking, what form factor. So really looking at intensity. How hard are you going? What sport are you doing? Someone who is a cyclist, going on a smooth road on a road bike will tolerate food and fluids very differently than someone who
jostling on a run. Yeah.
And again, environmental factors. Is it hot? Is it cold? So there's a lot, fine tuning. And I wasn't as experienced. I was going by numbers. This is how many calories I need. This is how many carbs I need. Really not having enough practice to fine tune, and it all literally came out. I left it on the side of the road, and that was a big lesson for me to. It's one thing to know what to do, and it's another thing to really practice, adapt it to your training, to the specific race that you're doing. And this question comes up for me very frequently, where everyone just wants this one-liner, like, what should I eat? Well, I probably have 20 questions that I can ask before we should fine-tune, and you should ask yourself those questions too, because as an athlete, I don't follow the same nutrition plan for every single race, for every single distance. I adapt to the situation. So just like my coach, for years, would challenge me on asking the question, what is the purpose of your workout? Like, know the purpose to your workout. That will answer a lot of your questions. Same thing with nutrition. Ask yourself, like, what am I going to demand myself, out of this workout? Because even if you're doing a long run, if it's just time on your feet and relax, and you're running to get to top of the summit, it's very different if you're doing a long run and you're trying to do tempo in the middle, and the intensity is pretty high, and on top of it, it's 80 degrees outside. Recommendations would be very different from, and how we're going to build the nutritional plan than someone who, next week is that same person, that same athlete is going, on a leisure, 3-hour long run.
Before we get into other questions, I just want to take a quick little commercial break and remind you guys of our giveaway this week, which is featuring goo sampler products. You're going to get a whole mess of various goo gels. You can try a bunch of different flavors, figure out the ones that work really well for you, and then you can double down and order even more. So kind of a nice thing right there. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this YouTube video. You can enter, and we'll do the drawing at the end of the show.
Yeah, and we also, the second giveaway with goo, I think there's a package of cola, goo, and salted lime chews, which I tried this last week, and it really, the cola goo really tastes like cola, and the salted lime chews are awesome. So,
yeah, Magda, do you have any favorite flavors? Flavors?
I of course. I mean, you know what? It really. You're not gonna like my answer, but it really depends. It depends what I'm doing.
Sure.
How about this is a really good one though. Actually, I've asked you. I remember asking you this one before, and you talked about the temperature. So I would love to hear this answer again. Right.
So there's a reason why goo makes 31 flavors, and we do have a lot of different flavors, and it's not just because it's fun, because flavor science definitely serves a purpose in delivering on our promise to fine-tune that nutrition plan. So again, if I'm doing Kona, triathlon, I'm not going to be recommending to an athlete to be taking chocolate. Even chocolate is like one of my favorite flavors, but it has to be on a cold morning where where with my hot cup of coffee, I wouldn't take chocolate outrage when it's again 90 degrees outside, and it doesn't excite me. It's harder on the gut to stomach that. I would recommend our citrus flavors, which will definitely help you not only encourage hydration, but it's a lot easier to take them down on a hot day. So flavors definitely have their purpose behind being just delicious and reminding you of that delicious chocolate cake that you can enjoy, or a little carrot.
Yeah, that is such a good point, because you could have the most intelligently thought out and designed nutrition plan, and X number of hours in, especially if it's like an ultra, your stomach is like, nope. It's just, it doesn't matter. You need to have something else.
The right flavor at the right time, just like the right ingredients at the right time. So during the TRT, I was in the middle of the night. I was just on a kick, and I pretty much like made my crew look for every cold brew, Rakuten cold brew coffee flavor. And that's all I wanted to have. It was in the middle of the night, and for me, it was probably a moment where caffeine was really important, and I was looking for a little bit more caffeine to keep me alert, but also just kind of the thought of enjoying a cup of coffee was also providing a level of pleasure in the middle of the night, and 150 miles into it. So flavors do have a purpose. Way beyond just the nutritional value that they provide, and just being your favorite or your preference. You could take the wrong flavor at the wrong time, and it could just discourage you from continuing to eat, and that is a disaster in an endurance event.
So Magda, you said something about like a flavor at the right time. So I just saw a question in the comments here about your recommendation for when someone should eat after they're done with their run. So I want to extend that to like, what's your recommendation for the timing after run, but also before your workout, and maybe taking into account that it's not necessarily like a very long run, but even just like a 20-minute workout, let's say. What does that look like?
Yes, so I would say that being very thoughtful. Again, think about the purpose of your workout. If it's a high intensity 20-minute workout, and you're doing HIIT training, it could be whether it's resistance or or aerobic workout. In 20 minutes, if you're doing like interval workouts, you can definitely deplete your muscle glycogen stores. But also being very thoughtful about how much bulk your pre-exercise meal contains will also make or break your workout. So imagine like sitting down to something that can be very healthy in theory. So a bowl of beans with with a ton of different fresh vegetables. I definitely that's like a staple for me during dinner time, but it's not something I would eat right before my workout because it contains a lot of fiber. There's a lot of bulk in there, and it will take a long time to digest before you can get any benefit out of it. And you're going to be carrying this during your workout, and we'll probably have to make several pit stops.
So what would be like your ideal, like if you could just recommend one go-to pre-run meal, what would it be?
I would say something that's really easy to digest, and you're starting with the carbs. So I usually go for toast or a stroopwafel with some nut butter on it. Again, not too much nut butter because too much fat will also take a long time to digest. But toast or stroopwafel with some nut butter, a little bit of jam if you want, and making sure that you're hydrating as well along the way. But if you're not a sweet person and you're looking for something more savory, I would say toast with an egg would be also a great option. So it depends if you like to go for sweet breakfast versus savory breakfast. There are options. Keeping it really simple. You could do banana with a nut butter. Keeping it light, so you can. Again, it takes time to break down the food that you eat, and for that food to be available for you to use as energy. So think about how long is your workout. If you're going for a super long run, then yes, that energy
you can eat a little
eventually
more.
You can eat a little bit more because you're going to use it. But if it's a 20-minute workout, you're better off doing something really light. Make sure that there is you're not jostling and it's jostling with you, or you taking it for a ride, and then focusing on the post exercise nutrition is critical, and really depends on the workout again. But rehydrating, number one. So you want to replace fluids. Restoring your muscle glycogen stores. So even in a very, in a very high intense workout that is, 20, 30 minutes, you can still deplete muscle glycogen. So carbs are important, and then protein along with that, because you are, focusing on repairing your muscle and rebuilding your muscle. So my go-to is a Ractane recovery drink, and it's I get really creative with how I make it. It could be a smoothie where put it in a blender. You can do it standalone, but we have chocolate chocolate smoothie.
You can mix it up a lot.
You can mix it in so many fun ways, and you can bake with it too.
Yeah, so Magda, we've gotten a few questions. We're kind of pivoting more towards, I'm sure Ashley and I could just talk your ear off this whole time, but we want to get some of our users' questions. That's you guys. We've gotten a few questions from people listening talking about, well, what do I do if I'm starting to feel nauseous, or when my performance starts to drop? And sometimes those are usually the same thing. What do you start to do in those situations? And that might be like I'm later in a race, I'm in the situation I'm in. How can I get out of that situation as quickly as possible?
Right, definitely, and that definitely has happened to me in the past as well. And like you said, it's a chain effect. You start getting nauseous. You either don't respond to it in time, and you either stop eating or you start, throwing up. But either way, it's you're starting to get in a position where you're going to be behind on on fuel eventually if you continue to keep going. So I think that there's not one answer, and everyone is different. It really depends on a situation. A lot of the times, high intensity, you going too hard can cause and trying to eat at the same time, or trying to eat too much, or trying to eat the wrong stuff that you there's just not enough time to to break down the fuel. And
because as you're running or as you're digesting food, you need blood around the stomach and the small intestine to digest. And as you start working harder, or it gets harder or warmer, that blood is shunted away from the gut into your muscles. So that's it's a fine balance, right? It's so that's why it's really important to eat stuff that does not require a lot of demand for digestion, right? So as much as we all want to say, I want to eat whole food diet when I'm running, well, that's a conflict of interest for your gut, because that requires a lot of blood flow to digest. So you're putting a huge amount of demand on the gut to break down this delicious food that is a lot more digestible when you're sitting at rest at your kitchen table. But when you're moving, that's a different scenario, and you have to respect that. And that's a very dangerous situation to be in, because it can cause your body just saying, I'm either going to force you to stop exercising at that intensity, and usually usually probably,
you will start
slowing down a little bit is not a bad thing to start.
So I was about to say, like, the first thing you do is kind of just take a pause to reevaluate, like, where you are. Am I pushing too hard and I'm just not able to digest everything? So slow down on pace, allow more blood flow for digestion, take a little bit more time at the aid station, focus on variety. And variety is not the answer sometimes in those situations. So you want to do a process of elimination. Just go to basics, focus on drinking, focus on just going as bland as possible. If there is rice at the aid station, maybe focus just on rice. Don't take 20 different things from the aid station, because you won't know what is really causing what's the root to the problem, and you want to figure out fairly quickly so you can get on course and get you to the point where you can start eating.
So Magda, what about for I saw some questions in here kind of geared towards like a new runner or someone who maybe isn't running an ultra but is starting to learn about nutrition and hydration and that combination when they're running. Kind of going back to what you said earlier about like experimenting with these things, like you can have this perfect dialed plan on what looks right in a textbook, like, oh, I should eat this many calories, have this much water, but depending on the temperature and all these things, you can run into trouble with that. So how would you recommend to a new runner that they start to learn their body and how to experiment with this? Like, how do you know you're taking in the right amount of calories, maybe before you run, during you run, after you run, and then how do you know how much fluid to take in with that?
Right. Great questions. But practice, you plan. Yeah. That's number one. You have to train with it. Just, and this is a really good point. Just like we're training, our legs to get stronger and, be able to, tolerate the stress that we're going to do during a 5K or a 10K or a marathon. It's same with our gut. Our gut is trainable. We can, by introducing, the nutrition plan that you have set out for yourself that you're going to execute in 8 weeks or 12 weeks of training, you want to get to the point that after 12 weeks, you're not even questioning your training plan, right? You can do it with your eyes closed, and because it has worked for you in the training during during the high intensity workouts, when the heart rate is as high, you've practiced. During your long runs, you have practiced. So I don't practice my nutrition just on my long runs. I also, do it in between my intervals when my heart rate is really elevated. You can recruit receptors that are going to allow you to break down the fuel that you're introducing, and that takes time. It takes practice, and you can learn how there are recommendations out there that
what might be some signals for people, because we kind of established earlier that you're like, okay, if you're nauseous, you're some combination of too hot, going too hard, too much food, right. Avoid chocolate on hot days, right? If someone is dehydrated, right, because I think that's a common thing. Runners, especially early on, they're focused, like they don't drink enough, or all of a sudden they're in a new routine, they don't realize they're sweating as much as they are, even on a cool day. So what would be some telltale signs if you are not as hydrated as you should be?
Well, usually your heart rate it's a lot higher for any given effort. So if something like on a scale, and we can use just perceived effort, right? If on a scale from 1 to 10, your run usually feels like a 5. With dehydration, it's going to feel like a 7 or 8. So perceived effort, goes up. Usually, motivation also goes down when you're dehydrated. There are people that get headaches. So there is multiple signs that lead to that.
And then just really quickly, just throwing in the color of your pee is one that we all is a good one to if you want to look at it.
Right.
The lighter color is better. You don't want cola.
If the color of your pee is the color of Magda's shirt.
That's a trick question. Is that you dehydrated, or is it that you well hydrated?
Or did you just take vitamin B?
Or did I? Yes. Or did I have some turmeric muffins for? No, but that's another. So that's another great. That's hard to do. In the middle of the run, but throughout the day, you can pay attention to your urine color to make sure that you also stay hydrated throughout the day. So yes, the darker your pee color, the more dehydrated you are. And then you also don't want to overhydrate, right? So you don't want it crystal clear. So that's a really good point, but also just kind of doing an occasional check. You can have those checkpoints where you weigh yourself before a run. Make sure that you know how much fluids you take in during, and then weigh yourself right after. And you should do it naked, because you will be sweating and it will be in your clothes. So you want to make sure that that occasionally you do a check on yourself. You
can establish your sweat rate that way.
Absolutely. And as the fitter you get, that will change. So paying attention to exactly someone who is starting, how much they're sweating in the beginning of a training program versus later. We do become more efficient with our ability to perspire with training. So the fitter you get a lot more efficient with that. So paying attention to that is
So I thought we could pivot to some other types of questions that are really equally relevant to everything you've done, which is how you keep yourself healthy. Guys, we have a new little section in the Run Experience app that's a little mini gear section. We've actually got some videos featuring Magda, going a little bit more into general nutrition and ultra nutrition. So it's definitely a good place to go to get a little bit more follow up and see some of Magda's favorite goo flavors in there. But we've been getting some questions in on just, how you, kind of keep yourself healthy. And one of the questions we got from, I'm not sure if this is from Harley Girl. I love the names. Part of my favorite thing, Ashley, is just reading the names that people have. I think this is Harley Girl 5663, or either way, you're getting the credit for the question. Is what are your favorite exercises for knee strength and knee health? Because that's something that affects a lot of runners.
Right. I think my go to, if I had to pick one exercise, it's squats. It's again focusing on quad strength, focusing on hip strength, focusing on glute strength, just overall, and definitely doing it correctly. A lot of the times, I'll put an elastic band around my knees to make sure that my form is correct and that I'm not compensating when I'm doing, especially when I'm sore, or just lingering stuff from workouts. You tend to naturally compensate. So doing proper form for squats can be body weight, does not need to be with heavy weights, but that is my favorite go-to exercise.
The band is really good, and especially as a lot of us are home right now and not able to access equipment in a gym, adding a band around your knees is such an easy way to add just a little external load and tension to really get those hips activated and prevent those knees from collapsing and caving in. So that's such a nice detail right there.
That is definitely, and stretching. I think that knee pain or any other pain, a lot of the times, it's not always lack of strength. It could be just, it could be as simple as just lack of flexibility. One of my favorite, sayings, and I really don't know who should get the credit for it or who said it first, but strength without flexibility. Strength without flexibility is rigidity, and flexibility without strength is instability. So it is a fine balance. Doing more strength is not always the answer.
It's a really, really good point, because there are a lot of athletes that will sometimes conflate, like there are some strength benefits to say yoga, but I've worked with a lot of yogis over the years that are so mobile, they don't know how to control and stabilize their bodies in space. And conversely, I've worked with a lot of really strong guys that take 200 pounds just to push their hips below parallel, so they're really strong, but they just don't have that range.
So it's a fine balance.
And in the running motion, there's like a certain amount of spring that has to take place. So if you have too much flexibility, it's like and especially in your hips, and that's something with yoga too, when you're really hyper flexible without strength, and you just don't have that hip stability, which can create all kinds of issues when you're running faster, because you don't have the spring mechanism working as well. Hey, so there's another question I've seen a couple times on here about how you schedule your rest days.
That's a good one.
And this is an interesting one, because I have a friend recently who her and her husband got in a little bit of a discussion about her training program, because she was taking a rest day on a different day than the day that was prescribed. And he was very much thinking, well, you should follow your plan exactly. And I was like, well, I don't know. So what do you make of that, Magda?
Again, I would answer this question so differently 20 years ago. When I was a younger athlete, and I really I was extremely coachable. So when my coach, not that I'm not coachable right now, but I also have a lot more experience, right? To maybe as a young athlete, I didn't trust my judgment as much. So I did everything that was on the plan. Like my coach said jump, I said how high. And I didn't question. And it was to a fault where sometimes I felt like I needed a day off, but that's not what the workout sheet said, so I wouldn't. Over the last couple of decades, you learn experience does contribute to more confidence in making those decisions, and it has for me.
So what are those signs for you?
So these days, I do take one day off a week, but it definitely fluctuates when I take it. And honestly, life has so much to do with this, and it's not just I don't feel recovered, but maybe I'm emotionally drained, or maybe my family needs me. So I have one day a week where I'll tell myself it's okay that it's happening on a Wednesday versus a Sunday. It's I give myself the permission to have that kind of flexibility and choosing that day. Because at the end, I ask myself, what's the purpose of taking that rest day? It's to recharge. And as long as I'm using it for that versus like, oh, I just don't feel like getting off the couch, it's very different. Is it serving the purpose that it should? It's for me to recover, to recharge. And if it happens on a Monday, that's fine. Mm-hmm. And it's looking more at what is, how am I going to gain consistency in my training of a long period of time versus putting a check next to my training plan. I did everything, but then a month later I'm so drained that I'm going to take a month off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also,
I was going to say there is such a duality of messages we hear online, because sometimes it's like, oh, I woke up tired today, trained anyway, awesome, like better, like feel better tomorrow. And then the other part is like, well, like pump the brakes, like less is more, sometimes don't follow the plan. And I think sometimes as runners, we're like, well, what should I listen to? Should I listen to the like drill sergeant coach yelling at me to like run uphill in the snow both ways? Or should I, chill?
Yeah. Starting to question whether you're making the decision coming from a good intent. Am I being lazy? And should I just be more harsh on myself? And yes, I want to listen to that. But my coach always reminded me, rest is a part of training. It's not avoiding training, and that has been a huge lesson for me. And taking your rest for the right reasons will extend your longevity as an athlete, and would also contribute to that consistency, which allows us to get better over time. I always keep saying, and this is something that, I remember for years, Shalane Flanagan say, she's like, I hate being on a sideline with an injury. And that is, that's something that, stuck really with me. I'm like, yeah, who likes to be on a sideline? I don't like to be on a sideline. And, consistency is key to us getting better as runners. Consistency is exactly what makes us better, and trying to figure out what the hurdles are that either lead to injury or lack of motivation, and addressing that. And 20 years ago, I would have been so afraid to take a rest day. I would have felt like, oh, I'm behind my competitors, they're training harder than me. But that is such a short-term, thinking. So I always tell people, like, do you want to be running 20 years from now and for the next 20 years? It's okay to take a rest day.
Yeah. So final question for you, Magda. There are a couple that just came in about the same thing, and then we are going to do the drawing live, so you need to be present. We'll check to make sure that you're here. So a couple people have asked, is it rest, like total rest versus active rest? And both of those are like very valuable. But determining when you should be doing like active rest, or when is it a day to just like, lay on the couch and be fine with that? Because sometimes that's important.
Because sometimes people's active rest kind of creeps up a little high. You're like, really? Was that, active rest? Like,
Did you really need to walk the same number of miles that you would have run?
Was that kickboxing class active rest because it wasn't running?
Right. And usually when you're doing something that is so different, it takes so much more effort. So some people will say, oh, well, I'll just go swim. But if you're not really a swimmer, swimming takes a lot of, effort out of you and energy. And it's a learning curve for a lot of athletes. So, no, I mean by rest, I'm not saying you have to just spend 12 hours on the couch. I think movement is so good for us. Like, I don't really consider walking my dog, hampering my rest day. But I'll go on a walk with my family, but it might be, again, it's for the sake of spending time with my family. I'm not exercising, but a complete rest day. There is active recovery as well, which is different. It could be where you cross training, but rest is rest. Active recovery could be swimming or biking or, doing other forms of exercise. That's still
lower intensity.
It should be low intensity.
So leisurely walking your dog, Shauna.
Yes.
Shauna, who says a crap ton of yard work and taking the dog for a 6-mile walk. Well, all right. I think it's time to do a drawing here for
Sounds
our winners.
good, you guys.
Okay, so first winner.
We have our winners, Ashley?
I have them.
Ooh.
Dun, 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 dun. All right. Linda Scavarda from Georgia. I hope I said your name right, Linda. Are you here? Dun dun dun. Tell us that you're here.
Come on.
Well, she sees.
Come on, Linda.
Well,
there's always a little delay on the chat with what we're saying, so we'll see if she's chimed in there.
We'll give her some time.
And then who's the second winner?
Yeah, I have Carolyn Bush from Summerville, South Carolina.
All right,
Carolyn Bush. So who's the first name again?
Woo!
Woo!
So we got Linda.
All right. Lucky
and
Linda.
Then Carolyn Bush.
Carolyn Bush.
You are the second Lucky Duck winner of your own little goo energy sampler. I always imagine. You guys remember like the little cereal boxes that came in like the 12 packs, like like the really small. I had 4 brothers, and we would like get those as treats on the weekends because they had like Cocoa Puffs and all like the sweet cereal. And if I slept in, all my brothers would like eat all the sweet stuff, and I would be stuck with like plain Cheerios, which when you're 6 is the worst.
Cool. I think someone said Caroline commented, but I don't see her. I see Linda commenting. I'll give Caroline one more second. All right, we'll draw another name here.
We'll get one more one there.
Okay. Alexandra Burl from Chicago.
Alexandra Burl from Chicago.
Let's go, Chi-Town.
There we go.
Magda, it's been so awesome talking to you about nutrition and your running. For those of you listening, we're going to link the film that we talked about, the Tahoe Rim Trail, in the description below, and some other content with Magda. We can also, if you haven't done the workout with her from Wednesday, definitely check that out. If you're in the Run Experience app, check out some of the nutrition content with Magda, and she talks about some of her pre and post-run nutrition options in there as well. We did a full interview with her earlier in the year about that, or last year, I think it was.
Time flies.
I know.
All right, there's Alexandra.
Thank
She's
you, guys.
there.
All right, we got both our winners. So great.
Thank you all so
Magda,
much.
thank you again. Yeah, this was so fun.
You guys were awesome. Thanks for everything that you guys are doing for the community.
You too. Thank you for contributing a workout. It was quite hard.
Perfect. And Ashley, we'll be back here next week for our live show, same time, same place.
I was about to hop off without even saying what we're doing next week.
I know. Should we say who we have as a special guest?
I guess we should. So we have Desi Linden, our next guest on YouTube Live. I think it's the Friday before Boston would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, love Desi.
Yeah. And she has a really special video for us next week. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I will tell you it's not a workout.
It's a different type of workout, but I'm going to tell you all who know me, it's more of a my style workout. So
I think I know what it is.
I think I know what it is.
All right,
awesome.
You all, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy tomorrow's run with Dean Karnassus, and Sunday is going to be another mystery-ish run that you will find out what it is.
Okay.
All right, bye, you all.
Bye.